Good day and welcome to the dining room table. U.S. Secretary of State Blinken goes on a peace tour. Subscribe, like, and share. Secretary Blinken goes back to the Middle East to speak to global leaders about what's happening in the Middle East. He also speaks to fellow NATO members. He speaks with leaders of the Israeli government and also leaders of the Palestinian government. We are doing the Preventing World War III watch to see what's happening over there. A lot of leaders are talking about making sure that the conflict in the Middle East does not escalate. This is what Secretary Blinken says is his reasoning for going over there. He also wants to talk about the humanitarian aid to Gaza and what does Gaza look like after the war. He is going to speak before he gets on the plane. We're going to hear some commentary after he meets with some of the leaders, and then a wrap up of his whole trip. This Red Sea is really giving some trouble over there in the Middle East. Operation Prosperity Guardian was set up by America with some coalition members. The Houthis in Yemen that are said to be backed by Iran have stated numerous times until the war in Gaza stops, until civilians are no longer being killed, they will not allow any ships that are going to Israel or are Israeli backed through the Red Sea. There's been a lot of showdown there. 10 Yemenis men were killed by the U.S. Navy. A ship was hijacked back in November. America is trying to get some more countries in. There are some countries that are part of Operation Prosperity Guardian, but they do not want to state that they're a part of it. Make sure you check out my other videos. I go into all of that more. We follow the tracking of what's happening in the Red Sea and the statements from many different sides. So we're going to hear from Secretary Blinken right now before he gets on to the plane and see what is his reasoning for going, what is he trying to accomplish. Let's hear from him.
We're now heading back to the Middle East. This is the fourth time since October 7th that I'll be in the region. And we'll be there at what remains an incredibly difficult time for the region in the wake of the October 7th attacks on Israel. As we've said from day one, we have an intense focus on preventing this conflict from spreading. And a big part of the conversations we'll be having over the coming days with all of our allies and partners is looking at the steps that they can take, using the influence and ties that they have to do just that, to make sure that this conflict doesn't spread. Second, we'll be looking at what we can do to maximize the protection for civilians, maximize humanitarian assistance getting into them, and also to get hostages out of Gaza. The situation for men, women, and children in Gaza remains dire. Far too many Palestinians have been killed, especially children. Far too many remain incredibly challenged in terms of their access to food, to water, to medicine, to the essentials of life. So it's imperative that we see a substantial and sustained increase in the assistance that's getting to them, as well as the protection of civilians in general. Third, we will focus on the steps that remain to make sure that October 7th never happens again, and that we get on a path to a sustainable, peaceful, secure future for everyone. That starts with the work that's going to be necessary in Gaza itself to rebuild, to have security, to have Palestinian-led governance, and it goes to the longer path, the broader path, toward durable peace and security for Israelis and Palestinians alike. These are not necessarily easy conversations. There are different perspectives, different needs, different requirements, but it is vital that we engage in this diplomacy now, both for the sake of the future for Gaza itself, and more broadly, the sake of the future for Israelis and Palestinians, and for the region as a whole.
Secretary Blinken made a stop to Turkey to speak with the president of Turkey. They are NATO members, and they also spoke about Sweden becoming a member of NATO. In 2022, Sweden and Finland were invited to be members of NATO. In 2023, Finland became a member of NATO. So now it's up for Sweden. So they had this conversation while he was out there. The secretary met with the Greek Prime Minister Mitsotakis, and they discussed Ukraine, bringing assistance to Ukraine, because the NATO members, they are helping Ukraine because they're all in that region, and even though Ukraine is not a member, that because they're so close to Russia, they're all assisting. They're also talking about the navigation in the Red Sea. Now, remember what I told you? There's a lot of war going on in the Red Sea, and they're looking for more countries to join Operation Prosperity Guardian. The secretary met with the Emirati President Mohammed bin Zayed of the UAE. They have been a big part with Qatar on negotiation in the UN and with the wording, just the negotiation between the Israeli government and the Hamas. They also spoke about the conflict in the region widening. As he mentioned in the beginning, they don't want this to become a greater issue, and more countries coming in and creating a war, right? They also spoke about the independent Palestinian state and the establishment of that and what that would look like. Now, he met with His Majesty King Abdullah II in Jordan, and they spoke about the conflict not spreading further in the region. Again, that was a topic there. I told you the Red Sea, there's a lot going on, and they're just trying to make it not be a bigger issue. The Houthis have said many times what their demands are. And America has said that, they're going forth with this coalition. There's some countries that are saying their part. There's some countries that are not saying. There's some countries that have reported to have left the coalition and is just going to be there on their own. And there's some countries that are said to have coming in because of the slowdown of the commerce. Make sure you check out those videos. So although the secretary said that he spoke about the conflict not spreading any further, Jordan put out their own message to say that they spoke about immediately stopping the aggression and protecting the civilians and ensuring adequate, sustainable access to humanitarian and medical aid. And this is what they spoke of. And Jordan said they spoke about the illegal Israeli measures. So this was their comment after the Secretary of the U.S. put out their statement. Jordan also goes on to put out another statement that says that they spoke with, when they spoke with the Secretary Blinken, that they had him affirm his rejection to the placement of the Palestinians inside or outside of their homeland. There were some Israeli elected officials that made some comments about the Palestinians just relocating, and Jordan wants them to reaffirm that this is not going to happen or even thought about. Saudi Arabia met with Secretary Blinken, the Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, and they also spoke about preventing the further spread of the conflict. That Red Sea is a huge issue. A lot of money has to be spent, and it was said that when they want to get to Americans or the West, you got to hit them in the pocket, and with the ships not being able to go through the Red Sea, going around Africa, causing a lot of delays, a lot of money, security. It's causing more um, Navy ships and countries to come out. But the Houthi said, as long as the war in Gaza continues, they will not stop. Bahrain. Secretary Blinken went out there, and his conversation was the importance of strategic partnership and shared commitment once again in the Red Sea. That's a topic that they're bringing up. It's a lot going on. Make sure you check out my videos. We're going to hear from Secretary Blinken on the wrap up of his visit. And now here is Secretary Blinken after he has finished up his 3-day trip.
We just finished our third day of a trip that thus far has taken us from Turkey to Greece, to Jordan, to Qatar, the United Arab Emirates, to here in Saudi Arabia. Everywhere I went, I found leaders who are determined to prevent the conflict that we're facing now from spreading, doing everything possible to deter escalation, to prevent a widening of the conflict. We also talked about the future for this region. And I think there's broad agreement on a few basic objectives. First, that Israel and Israelis should be able to live in peace and security, free from the fear of terrorist attacks or aggression from any of their neighbors. Second, that the West Bank and Gaza should be united under Palestinian-led governance. Third, the future of the region needs to be one of integration, not division and not conflict. And fourth, for that to happen, we need to see the establishment of an independent Palestinian state. Now, no one I talk to thinks any of this will be easy. All recognize the hurdles, and no one thinks that anything will happen overnight. But we agreed to work together and to coordinate our efforts to help Gaza stabilize and recover, to chart a political path forward for the Palestinians, and to work toward long-term peace, security, and stability in the region as a whole.
What do you think? He finished up his 3-day tour. He said he believes something can be worked out. Now, he came back to the U.S. And put on another press conference to give another wrap up. Let's hear from Secretary Blinken in this one as well.
This is my fourth trip to Israel since the horrific Hamas attacks of October 7th. So I'm here just over 3 months, 95 days since those attacks occurred. We know that for the people who are most affected by the attacks and the conflict that's followed, time moves differently. Immediately before this, I met with the families of hostages being held in Gaza and with hostages who've been released. Several of those families I've now met multiple times. For them, every day, every hour, every minute that they're separated from their loved ones is an eternity. Time feels different for families in Gaza as well, hundreds of thousands of whom are experiencing acute food insecurity. For the mother or father trying to find something to feed a hungry child, the passage of another day without food is excruciating. Time also feels different for Israelis and Palestinians whose innocent loved ones have been killed. For them, time often falls into before and after. The after filled with a loss that most of us will never know and cannot fully imagine. And those are just a few examples of how heavy these 95 days have felt and continue to feel for the people most affected by this conflict. This immense human toll is one of the many reasons that we continue to stand with Israel in ensuring that October 7th can never happen again. It's also why we're intensely focused on bringing the remaining hostages home, addressing the humanitarian crisis, and strengthening protection for civilians in Gaza, and preventing the conflict from spreading.